The Shinjus in Boruto are one of the most interesting aspects of Two Blue Vortex. These entities are not just overpowered, but they add an intriguing dynamic to the story itself. Now, for all intents and purposes, the story does portray this entity as the first of its kind, but it's not really true. Well, I have it on good authority that this isn't necessarily the case, because the first Shinju was actually Kaguya. You see, the crazy thing about this is that it was hinted at multiple times in the story, and this even goes back to Naruto's manga. Now, for this to make sense, we first need to understand what the Shinju are, which are in essence divine tree people. I mean, the name itself literally translates to divine tree, so that much should be evident. With that said, this does go a bit deeper than that, because the divine tree simply doesn't become a Shinju. It also needs access to the consciousness of someone else, and in this case, that person was Kaguya. Now, to understand what I mean by this, we first need to go back to chapter 690 of Naruto's manga, when Kaguya herself transformed into the Getter statue. This left many readers confused, since Kaguya is of course a completely separate entity from the Ten Tails itself. So if anything, the Ten Tails should have been extracted from her body as well, as was the case for the other Biju and Madara's body. Yet what ended up happening is that not only did Kaguya transform into the Getter statue, that being the body of the Ten Tails, she was also sealed alongside it. Now, this might seem like it shouldn't make sense, but it does, and it also leads back to Kaguya being a Shinju. You see, this ties into Kaguya's backstory, which is that she came to Earth with Ishiki, betrayed him, stole the chakra fruit, and later had 2 children. This should be familiar to everyone, so there's no need to fully recap the story itself. What is important to point out is that Hagoromo and Hamura didn't actually fight Kaguya as depicted in the anime. In fact, they didn't actually seal Kaguya on the moon. Well, they actually did, but it's a bit more complicated. You see, as stated by Black Zetsu in chapter 681, the Ten Tails isn't just the divine tree, it's Kaguya herself as well. So it wasn't the divine tree's incarnation trying to reclaim its chakra fruit. It was actually Kaguya's will attempting to take back the chakra that was dispersed into her 2 children. He even mentioned that Hagoromo himself didn't know this truth, which refers back to him telling Naruto that they had battled the Ten Tails, which was the incarnation of the divine tree. Now, this simply means that Hagoromo didn't know that Kaguya had merged with the Ten Tails, nor that he was actually battling his own mother. He thought that he was just fighting a mindless beast trying to reclaim the power taken from its fruit, which the 2 brothers now possessed. By the way, this is backed up by the fact that it's stated by Hagoromo himself that they battled the Ten Tails to atone for the crimes Kaguya left behind, which means that Kaguya wasn't even present at that time. With that said, the point of all of this is to show that instead of being consumed by the Ten Tails, Kaguya found a way to merge with the Ten Tails instead. This then led to Kaguya awakening her own unique Biju form, which pretty much manifested in the form of a giant rabbit. In fact, she then became the 10th tail of the Ten Tails, as shown when all the Biju was extracted from the host's body. So this explains why in Naruto the last movie, it is stated that Hamura stayed on the moon to guard the Ten Tails, not Kaguya, because they didn't know that Kaguya was also the Ten Tails, which by the way is backed up by this databook statement. So in essence, this all adds up to Kaguya's chakra being the same as the Biju chakra, because not only did she consume its chakra fruit, she also merged with the beast as well and became a Biju. Now, Biju isn't the correct term to use here, since that refers to a tail beast, and Kaguya was of course an entire separate entity that merged with a tail beast. So if the Shinju are divine tree people, which are pretty much divine trees that have a consciousness, wouldn't that same title apply to Kaguya? Let me know in the comments. Now, this does go a bit further, since there's one more similarity that Kaguya shares with the Shinju, which is their need to consume a loved one. You see, the Shinjus possess an innate goal or instinct to consume the person closest to the person they copied. Jiro believes that this is some side effect to them evolving differently, thus changing their instinctual drive, and also that they should give in to it, which should in time reveal their personal targets. So this works out as Hidari wanting to consume Sarada, Matsuri with Konohamaru, Ryu with Gaara, and so on and so forth, yada yada yada. Now, this does start to get a bit tricky when we get to Jiro. You see, his target is Naruto Uzumaki for some reason, and while we can reason why the other Shinjus would be attracted to their targets, it doesn't quite make sense for Jiro as the incarnation of the Ten Tails, as stated in chapter 14. So why would he want to consume Naruto of all people? Well, my initial hypothesis was that the Shinju's targets aren't based on love per se, but more so the person that cloned individual had the deepest connection with. So Sasuke and his daughter, Sarada, Moegi and Konohamaru, and even Bug with Ada with the charm ability, it makes perfect sense. So, in essence, the method by which they share the connection isn't what's relevant. The connection itself is what really matters. So using that same logic, Jura, the incarnation of the Ten-Tails, would in fact have an obsession with consuming Naruto over everyone else, since Naruto has the deepest connection to the Tail Beast at large. And Jura, of course, being the incarnation of the Ten-Tails, has a connection to these other Tail Beasts. This would make perfect sense since it is stated that the Ten-Tails is nothing but a fragment of the God Tree that created the universe, which should apply to every Ten-Tails. This also implies a connection at the genetic level and could even form a mental link between these entities, which by the way Jura implied was the case for the Shinju by saying that they're still biologically connected. Now this connects back to Kaguya since after merging with the Ten-Tails and becoming a Shinju, the first thing that the Ten-Tails did was to attack Kaguya's sons. Why is that? We know Kaguya decided to take back the power because they turned against her as displayed in the anime continuity, but that didn't take place in the manga. Hagoromo didn't know that Kaguya had merged with the Ten-Tails, nor that he was battling his own mother. As I pointed out before, he thought he was just fighting a mindless beast trying to reclaim the power taken from its fruit. Again, he outright says that they battled the Ten-Tails to atone for the crimes Kaguya left behind, which means that Kaguya wasn't there from his perspective. I don't know, maybe she just left to get some milk and never returned. So yeah, why exactly did the Ten-Tails, which was now Kaguya in Shinju form, attack them? Well, that's because, just like Jura and the other Shinju, Kaguya also had people she cared about, which then manifested in her wanting to devour them, those people of course being her two sons. By the way, this also expounds on what Black Zetsu claimed, which is that this was Kaguya's will attempting to take back the chakra given to her two children. For some reason, she never tried doing this before, but on the same day that she mysteriously disappeared and became a Shinju, she just magically wanted to consume them for some reason. Black Zetsu outright says that it's Kaguya's will, and he should know this since he's also Kaguya's will. So it is somewhat true that it was the instincts of the Ten-Tails influencing Kaguya to consume just like the Shinju, but what she wanted to consume was based on who Kaguya herself had a bond with. By the way, this development of the Ten-Tails being humanoid similar to the Shinju was shown multiple times in Naruto. First with the Getter statue itself, which is the body of the Ten-Tails, and even the second form of the Ten-Tails to some degree. The first one literally had the form of a person with hands and feet to match, which the Ten-Tails in Boruto was slowly turning into as well, as seen in chapter 3. There's also the instance where the Ten-Tails in the war spoke to Madara telling him to absorb it, which shows that the beast itself had a consciousness similar to the Shinju. Now there is this one thing that I did found very weird, which is that Obito both had the God Tree planted and the Ten-Tails inside him at the very same time, which is really strange given the fact that the Ten-Tails is the God Tree. Though it could be the case that he was able to split the Ten-Tails in two for some reason, so it's not that big a deal. Now there is one more thing that we need to cover, which is Kaguya's immortality. You see, there's been this conversation around whether the Shinjus can be killed. This stems from the fact that it was established in Naruto that a Tail Beast will always re-emerge sometime after death. This was first mentioned by Kushina Uzumaki when she offered to take the Nine Tails with her to death so that the interval until it emerges again will be delayed. We also saw this happen with the Three Tails as well after it re-emerged a few years after dying in the body of Rin. So this isn't anything new, nor should it be surprising. Now I do understand that some believe that this will be different for Kurama since Kurama's chakra burnt out due to Baron mode, which implied that this resurrection process wouldn't apply to him. Even so, I want to point out that the story itself never implied this to be the case. Some mostly misinterpreted the Nine Tails, explaining why Naruto wouldn't have died due to losing the Tail Beast, similar to what happened in Shippuden. So the change in the process is that the Biju chakra vanishes from the body instead of being extracted, which is what causes the Jinchuriki to die. There's no indication that this now also means that Kurama wouldn't be able to return. In fact, Kurama said that he came to say farewell so far as that goes. So it was pretty clear that he was going to return, and that indeed happened. Now the question is, does this also apply to the Shinju since they are technically part Biju? Well, the answer is maybe. I've always said that this might not be the case since the Biju were created by Hagoromo using creation of all things. So there's a different factor at play here. So the concept of energy never dies can remain true for the Biju, but does that also apply to their personalities? So let's say Jura gets destroyed completely, even the Thorn Soul Bulb. Would he just resurrect after a few years with his personality intact, or would he resurrect at all? I'm not sure. Now, Kaguya is a bit different, since you could argue that she has a certain restriction given the fact that her essence was sealed. And as we know from Naruto, sealing even restricts jutsus like Edo Tensei from summoning souls, so that should apply here as well. So could Kaguya reform if the seal is released? The answer is maybe. That said, that's it for the video. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think Kaguya should be a Shinju? Do you think this retcon should take place? Because that's what it would be. It would be a retcon since Shinjus did not exist in Naruto, of course. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Drop a like if you liked it and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.